Voltaire, whose real name is François-Marie Arouet, was born on November 21st, 1694 in Paris, France. Voltaire was born into an aristocratic family during the reign of Louis XIV. He lost his mother at a young age of 7, and he was not close with his father or his 4 other siblings. However, he was very close with his godfather, the Abbé de Chateauneuf. Voltaire went to college at Louis-le-Grand in Paris. He became very interested in literature while attending the college, and he refused to study law after he graduated. He worked as a secretary at the French embassy, but was soon fired and sent back to Paris. There he began writing his famous epigrams that were full of satire and mockery. This eventually led to his exile from Paris and his imprisonment in 1717. Although Voltaire was a Frenchman, he was very fond of England because of their freedom of thought. He was later exiled there for more than 2 years, and during his exile, he embraced himself in the identity of a philosopher. Voltaire embraced his ideals of freedom of speech and thought in his works. His works also focused on the importance of reason. Voltaire was a witty philosopher who wrote many prominent pieces of literature during the Enlightenment era. Most of his works politically and socially criticized the monarchy and aristocracy. Some of his most popular works include his adaptation of the tragedy Oedipus, his own tragedy Zaire, poems such as the Henriade and the Maid of Orleans, historical works such as the Age of Louis XIV, and the essay on the customs and the spirits of the nations, and famous novella Candide. Many of these works went against French authority and society, which led to his many years in exile and his 2 imprisonments. For example, his Dictionnaire philosophique went against the Catholic Church and instead promoted Enlightenment ideals. During his exiles, he also spent time in Prussia, Geneva, Brussels, Cleves, Berlin, and Ferney. Voltaire quickly became one of France's most famous writers and influenced many other Enlightenment writers during his time. Voltaire was heavily influenced by the works of Sir Isaac Newton, John Locke, and William Shakespeare. He promoted religious toleration and the beliefs of deism. Deism discourages the teachings of the Church and encourages the ascertaining of religious knowledge through reason. Although he believed you attain religion through reason, he did still believe in a higher power. Many of his works incorporate his distrust of the government and the Church. He believes both are corrupt, and the government should be a monarchy advised by philosophers like himself. He also believed that many people use religion as personal guidance because they are unable to think rationally. Voltaire never married or had children, but carried on a long affair with a married woman named Émilie du Châtelet, and later on had a secretive partnership with his niece, Marie-Louise Mignon. Voltaire remained very wealthy throughout his life due to his winnings in the French National Lottery and his father's inheritance.
Voltaire, or François-Marie Arouet, was a French writer, historian, and philosopher who was well known for his wit and civil rights advocacy. He wrote in many different forms, with plays, poems, scientific journals, and novels all being included amongst his works. Voltaire was born in Paris, and against the wishes of his father, he pursued a career in writing, often in secret. He made trouble for himself by criticizing government and religious dogma, leading to many cases of imprisonment and exile. He adopted the name Voltaire after he was imprisoned in the Bastille for 11 months. Voltaire is an anagram of the Latin spelling of his surname, Arouet-Lee. Voltaire was exiled to Britain for 3 years, and during this time he published his views on British attitudes to government, literature, and religion, and during this time he was also introduced to the works of William Shakespeare. These works were controversial in France, and when he returned, the book was burnt and Voltaire was forced to flee again. He travelled across Europe and continued writing, and published further works on the teachings of Sir Isaac Newton, and wrote works on history and philosophy. Voltaire's plays became more and more popular, and despite his criticisms of government and religion, his literary influence extended across Europe and the world, and ultimately were a heavy influence